Jazzcast Pros.
I was watching the downfall of so many Black women in our community, and the narratives weren't being told by the women that were going through the experiences. And so I wanted to really shed some light on that and to, allow people in on the other side of the window so that they can see you for who you are and not for who the media says you are. And that you are a person with feelings and everything else that everybody else has. You are a person that is breathing God's fresh air just like everybody else. And I just wanted to, again, have this opportunity just to chat with you. So thank you again for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. But I also recognize and hear how people talk about Vice President Kamala Harris, right?
Mhm.
And it is sickening how they're degraded, how they're belittled, how people think that it's okay, and especially men, that it's okay to attack them in ways that they would never, ever attack a man, right?
Mm.
We really need to rally around and make sure that we are protecting our women in a way and building them up because, so many people feel that they have a right to degrade and a right to say whatever and do whatever and treat women a certain kind of way. And I don't care whether you're Black, whether you're white, women across the board, especially those that are in leadership positions, are experiencing this. And it needs to be called out, but something needs to be done about it.
Welcome to Grace and Grind, the podcast redefining what it means to act like a lady, but think like a boss. I'm your host, Dr. Pamala Brown-Grinion, certified executive coach and internationally credentialed etiquette, manners, and life skills expert with the British School of Excellence. And as usual, I have a special guest for you. It is the lovely and talented former mayor of Rochester, New York, lovely Warren. And this episode, we're going to be talking about navigating high-powered careers as Black women. And as I mentioned previously, lovely Warren is the former mayor of Rochester, New York. And so we're going to talk about a Black woman's journey of perseverance, leadership, empowerment, and legacy. Lovely. Welcome to the Grace and Grind podcast.
Thank you for having me, Doc. Excited to be here.
But I'm so glad that you're here. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing and where you see yourself going in the future. But first, I want to just give some of your highlights because you certainly have a wonderful career as the former mayor. You were the first Black female mayor. You were the second Black mayor and the youngest mayor. You were the youngest president in the history of the Rochester City Council. You had 2 wonderful terms where you served our community. You've been an attorney for 20 years. Now you have this podcast that is just rocking the community and keeping us enlightened with the Love and Light podcast on WDKX and successfully operating your own private practice. How do you get it all done?
The grace of God. It is through God's grace and God's mercy that I've been able to do the work that I've been able to do in the community and, continue to go on and to continue to practice law and have fun with my good friend, Willie Lightfoot on the Love and Light podcast, and also have another company called W Suite LLC with my great friend, Brittany Wells.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. So you've always focused on job creation. You've always focused on fostering safer and more vibrant neighborhoods. You have improving the educational opportunities for not just Black and Brown people, but for all communities in Rochester. You've helped to reduce poverty. You've advocated for small businesses. You've worked towards police reform. I mean, I can go on and on and on with all the wonderful things that you've done in your position as mayor and even just as a citizen in this community. But looking back on your time in office, what were some of your most significant challenges that you faced as a Black female leader, and how specifically did you navigate all of those things?
Well, I think that we can go into many challenges. First, being Black, and then being a woman, being young, not having people really take the work that you were doing seriously. But I am thankful because I see the work that continues, right? So, you start it and then, you hand it off, and you're seeing a lot of the things that we started come to completion and fruition. And it makes me proud to not only have been a part of it, but also to have envisioned it and laid the groundwork for change in our community. We had many challenges going in, and I think that when we look at it in the end, things are getting better. Not that we don't still have challenges in the city of Rochester, but I think that things are coming along, and I'd like to think that our administration has something to do with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like one of the quotes that you said in one of your interviews when you were talking about making different types of Reformation challenges. And you said, taking on these challenges may not make me popular with everyone, but I'm not running for homecoming queen. I'm leading the third largest city in New York State.
Yes.
That was powerful. So for other women that may also be in high power positions, what advice would you give them, particularly women of color that are facing their own leadership challenges in environments where they may feel marginalized? What advice could you give to them?
Well, I often tell people to stay focused on the work, right? Because a lot of times you can get sidetracked with all of the noise that's around you. And, some people not being satisfied, or some people feeling a certain way about the work that you're doing. But if you believe in your work, and if you can look in the mirror and say, listen, this is where we're going. And, the Bible says that without a vision, the people perish. And,
yes.
Having a vision for whatever direction you're taking your company in, whatever direction you're taking your organization, whether that you're a manager or a director or a mayor or any position that you're in, as long as you have a vision and you make it plain, I think that people will gravitate. I think that one of the things that was a challenge for me was bringing people along, right? Mm-hmm. And many times I just was like, look, this is where we're going. You can come if you want to, or you don't, but this is where we're going. And I don't necessarily, looking back, think that that's always the right approach. I think that you want to get some buy-in from the people that are around you, or the people that you're looking to lead, so that they understand that this is the reason why we have to do this, right? Mm-hmm. This is the reason why it's important to do a plan and to make it plain. So if you think about Rock the Riverway, right? We had the National League of Cities that came in, and it was like, look, your greatest asset is your river. And, you're one of few cities that have a river that flows north, right? So you got to figure out how to really build around this great asset. And that's how Rock the Riverway was born. And, we sent our city planners into sessions with, these national planners, and they came back with this dynamic plan. And you drive along, the Riverway right now, and you're like, wow, the changes and the parks and the changes along the Cornhill corridor, and the housing projects and other, developments that's going up. You're like, wow, those are the types of things that you want people to be able to understand and see, that as long as you make a vision and make it plain, people will buy into it, and they will continue it because they understand that this is part of where we need to go, right? I grew up in the Jefferson Avenue neighborhood, and my grandparents lived over there. I grew up in a 19th ward, but I was always over my grandparents' house, and you would always hear about Bull's Head and Bull's Head this and Bull's Head that. And one of the major things that we first started was demolishing those old buildings that were dilapidated on West Main Street and Genesee Street. And, now the city is continuing to do that. And I think that that's all great, because it's really about bringing communities and bringing neighborhoods back. And I would say that to really get buy-in from your subordinates or the people that you're working with, and let it be something that they understand as you start to develop the plan and the path forward.
Yes, I agree. You definitely have to have your stakeholders involved. But, I think that's one of the things that I really admire about you is that you are a visionary and you think systematically. You don't just think about, oh, I got an idea in my head, let's just do it. You think about the systems that are involved. And it's more than just the plan, right? But how many different systems are involved in order for us to get this going? And if you don't make the vision plain, if you don't have it written down and you don't bring your stakeholders along, then you're certainly going to, experience some perishing. I really admire that quality about you, the way that you think. And you also did a project with the Inner Loop and some things with educational reform. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So the Inner Loop Redevelopment project first started under Mayor Duffy at the time, and that was the Inner Loop East, and they filled in that portion of it. And Assemblyman David Gant, who was my mentor, was alive at the time. And he's like, look, we're just not going to stop on the East. We got to come north, right? And so now you see the plans and they're still doing, and he was the first one to give, over $1 million to planning out what will happen on the north side. And that's just where, Rochester during urban renewal happened in the late 1970s, where we really destroyed cities because we started to separate, downtown and separate neighborhoods. And, it was white flight. It was so many things that was happening during that time. And now you're trying to right a wrong. And so our administration was able to now take that moat that started to get filled in and now say, okay, well, what are we going to do with it? And on the Inner Loop East, what we did was build a neighborhood and connected neighborhoods to downtown. And you see this wonderful, wonderful project that has brought people together. And I must say, I go down there to eat dinner in those places and to see all the things that we were able to accomplish. And so thankful for being able to be a part of that and the expansion of the Strong Museum and seeing the young folks play there. And people come from all over the world really to Rochester to be a part of something that's great. And that's who we are as a community. And it's just a delight to see.
I love that. Do you feel like you have the community behind you with the things that you were doing? And even in your work now, do you feel like the community is still supporting you in your efforts?
I mean, you have your ups and downs, you have your cycles, right? And I think that in order to get any of the work done, you had to have community buy-in, because it's the community that's always going to be there. Rather, mayors come and go, council members come and go. But at the end of the day, the people that live in the neighborhoods are the ones that stay. I know many of our residents that have been on their block and in their neighborhood for 40, 50, 60 years. You're talking about generations, 3-4 generations of people that are living in certain houses and in certain communities. And so you want them to understand exactly where you're going, and you want their voice to be heard. Across the board, that's what we try to do. And I see that still continuing to happen to this day, where voices are being heard. They're being able to say, this is what we want. This is how we want it. As an attorney now, part of the work that I do, I'm mostly in family court. And, I deal with an attorney for the child. So at times I deal with, children that are going through some major struggles. And, I also represent parents. And, you see the effects of what's happening on the streets and in communities that's playing out in the court system. And so you have to be very, very cognizant of the holistic approach to how do you help this family overcome the challenges and what resources are available to them that they may not even know about. Now I know because of the work that I used to do, and I'm able to connect them.
So you another personal quote that I really liked when I was doing your research, and in my heart I was just like, love, and I still call you Mayor Lovely. I just because that's just a respect, and you don't hide your scars. You said, I've had to deal with the criminal justice system personally, which has allowed me to grow as a person, as a mother, and become a better lawyer. I've made my share of mistakes, and as part of that, there are many things that I regret, but all of that has made me a better person. And I think that goes back to what you were just saying about the way that you're able to help the people that you're able to help. Because once you experience something personally and you see the rights about it, you see the wrongs about it, you can implement your, right conduct, and you can implement passion in the right way towards, the service that other people need. It's the same way for me as a coach. I've been a coach for a very long time, but I've also been a coachee. And one of my longest coach just passed away, Helen J. Cheeves. And when I hear myself coach and when I see myself coach, because I have had the experiences personally with her as a coachee, I am a much better coach. And because she was so transparent with me, and, she said something, she used to always say her father gave her permission to fail. And that's something that, has always stuck with me, that we have our ups, we have our downs, but some kind of way we find a way to emerge. So what I want to talk about now is the next chapter that you went through when you resigned, but then you emerged so much stronger. What did you learn about yourself during that time? And how did that shape your perspective on resilience?
Well, I think that it was a choice, right? For me, I had to choose what was most important, right? I had been in elected office from the day my daughter was born, so she grew up with her mom in office, right? And there came a point where her father, my husband at the time, was going through something that was really major. And my lawyers came to me and said, look, this is what it looks like, right? I get it. And, being an attorney and having clients now, you have to be realistic and give them all the information, right? And given the position that I was in, I had to make a choice that, regardless of what it may seem to other people,
Mm-hmm.
I had to choose her.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And in choosing her, it was, I'm letting a part of me go, right? I had worked very, very hard to have the career that I had, to work, through whatever challenges I had growing up in college and law school, and to come and have the support. I had my boss had died, my mom had died in that, that span of time. And I was at a crossroads. Do you want to fight, or do you live to fight another day? And my choice was to live to fight another day, because I knew what the truth was. And I believe that many other people knew what the truth was. And when you're sitting there and you can see that the cards have been stacked against you, right? On one hand, it's stacked against you and you're playing this hand that you've been dealt, but you know that you can go all the way to the mat, and in the end, what it will look like, but what will it cost you to go all the way to the mat? And to go all the way to the mat, I believe that in the end, it would have cost me my daughter. And I wasn't going to put her through that. And so I made a decision and made a choice. And I live with it. I live with it every day. And I don't have any regrets in living with that every day.
Powerful.
What people might think, nobody knows. Right. Nobody knows the truth. Right. And so a lot of people that do know they always like, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. You need to write a book. You need to tell the story because other people tell your story for you. And if you ask 8 people, what do they think about Lovely Warren? And what do you think about this? 8 people will have 8 different opinions. And you owe it to her to tell your story. And maybe one day I will.
Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But, as you were speaking, it made me think about, I've never been a politician or any type of public position like that. But it just made me think about President Joe Biden. He had to make a really tough decision as well. And I can imagine being in a position, in a career that you've been in all your life. And now it's like, this is the best thing to do because it's the best thing to do. And I have to shift because this is the best thing to do.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when you're doing it for the right reasons, right? It's not an easy decision, but it's the right decision.
Right.
The president saw that the writing on the wall, he saw what was coming, and he said to himself, like, look, I'm going to do what's best for what I believe is best at this point for the American people because of what's at stake. And that's literally for me, at that point in time, what I had to do is like, okay, well, I was already, getting ready to leave office. And if this is what, if this is what you want, this is what, at the end of the day, it was the only thing that the person that was making the offer was non-negotiable, right? And so it's like I want that. That's what I want. And it's like, okay, it's fine. Because I believe that in the end, as I said when I was leaving office, history will be kind when they look back and they see the things that the Warren administration was able to accomplish.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to highlight all of those things in the beginning because, we know you, we love the work that you've done in the community. And we know that your work is going to still be standing in the community for decades to come because you built a solid foundation and it wasn't a strategic plan for right now. It was a strategic plan for the future. So we know that your work is still alive and doing what you set out for it to do in the Rochester community. So with that being said, and you mentioned a little bit about your daughter, let's talk about your future legacy. Like, how has your experiences shaped your views on leadership, Black women in leadership particularly? And what legacy do you hope to leave for your daughter and for the next generation of Black female leaders?
I look at the Black female leaders that we have here right now. And, I think that Senator Sam Brook is doing a phenomenal job and, just staying focused on the work. But I also recognize and hear how people talk about and the things that people talk about, the presidential candidate and our vice president, Kamala Harris, right? Mm-hmm. And it is sickening. I'm still in women mayors groups and things like that. And I hear, and they're often talking about how they're degraded, how they're belittled, how people think that it's okay, and especially men, that it's okay to attack them in ways that they would never, ever attack a man, right? Mm-hmm. I see that and I'm like, wow, we really need to rally around and make sure that we are protecting our women in a way and building them up because, so many people feel that they have a right to degrade and a right to say whatever and do whatever and treat women a certain kind of way. And I don't care whether you're Black, whether you're white, women across the board, especially those that are in leadership positions, are experiencing this. And it needs to be called out, but something needs to be done about it. As it pertains to legacy, my goal right now is to get my daughter through college, high school to college, and spend as much time as I can with her. As I said, she shared me with the community, until she was 13 years old. And in that, her and I had to have some really tough discussions because I felt like, I was there. I felt like, oh yeah, I was a good mom. I came home, I was there, I provided. You go to private school, you're into things, you're swimming, you're cheerleading, you're doing all those things. But am I present? Are you present? When you're in the room, are you present? Are you there? Are you there? Yeah, you might have been there physically,
Right.
but are you there? No, you're on your phone, you're talking, you're doing emails, people calling you in the middle of the night, you're running, and so I recognize that, sometimes God sends you through some things so that you can recognize and realize what's most important and focus on that. I recently got remarried and very happy with being a new wife. People always say, like, you want to get married again? And I was like, I like being married. I don't know about nobody else, but I liked being married.
Me too.
But it matters to be married to the right person, right?
That's it. That's it.
And so it's navigating those things with relationships, with my ex-husband, my daughter, my new husband, and focusing on the things that really matter most, because you only get one chance. I often talked about this when I was mayor. You only have one chance to raise a child. And I am now living what I used to talk about.
I learned a very valuable lesson from my oldest son. I think he was around 9 or 10, and I was running a daycare full time. I had an etiquette school full time, and I was consulting full time.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but I felt like I was present,
Yeah.
And when he was younger, he said to me, he wanted to do something. And I said, we spent time together. And he said to me, Mommy, just because we live in the same house together does not mean that we're spending time together.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell you, that thing shook me to my soul, and I'm thinking, you know what? Out of the mouth of babes, he is so right. And then I had to be more intentional about my presence. So I understand exactly what you're referring to as a mother. Sometimes we have to, do that shift, even though it's difficult. And he didn't want a lot of time. You can just give me an hour and then I'll leave you alone. But I was just, I got to write this curriculum. I got to plan this meal. I got to do this. And he was like, look, we live in a house together, but we're not spending time together. This is not quality time. It really made me change the way that I parented for the 3 children that followed him. Now they think I'm in their business too much.
Listen, that's how my daughter, like, when you going to work?
Like, you a helicopter parent, you a helicopter mom.
Yes.
I'm like, look, first I wasn't there, now I was there, And then when he was older, he had a conversation with me and he said, it really hurt my feelings sometimes when I see how much you pour into, because I was at all the games for his younger brother. And I was explaining to him that I was in a different place in my life. Like, forgive me. I was in a different place, so, and I've learned how to parent better with each child. Now the twins are the last ones. No more are coming. But I feel like I'm a better parent to the twins than I was to, I feel like I was a great mom, but I learned from my mistakes that I made with the first children to be a better mom for, the ones that follow. So, sister, I hear you.
Yes. Well, I only have the one now. And
wait a minute, you said now?
Well, I'm just saying, I only have the one. So I'm 47, so I only have the one. And so I only got one chance to get this right. And I am trying my best to make sure that I give her the attention and the love and the care that she definitely deserves. Because at the end of the day, our kids didn't ask to be here, right?
Right.
As you said, out of the mouth of babes, they will tell you, right? They will tell you. Now, whether you listen is a different thing. But they will tell you what they need, how they're feeling, and, have those difficult decisions. So I'm glad that, you're a mom that listened to your oldest son when he said, listen, you're in this house. And when you were talking, it reminded me of, I was reading something where a daycare provider, had to tell parents, like, leave your phone in the car. right? Leave your phone when you're coming to pick up your kids. Leave your phone in the car because that's the first time that they're seeing you from 6 hours, right? So they're excited to see their parent. They want to tell them about their day. And if you're walking in the door, talking on your phone, texting and all that type of stuff, that gives you a moment to just be present. And I went to pick up my little cousin, who I say my little niece, Jade, who was at your Links Walk, and pick her up from daycare the other day. And I thought about that, and I left my phone in the car on purpose. And I went in, and when she saw me, she just ran up to me and gave me a hug and was like, "Oh, I did this today. I did that today." And it was just, really, really exciting to see and to see that stuff play out. So I just advise parents, especially moms, to be more attentive and present when you can. At times, everybody has life and life be lifing, but try to do that.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to unplug on purpose. That's on purpose. And you need it, believe it or not, you need it. So that's one of the lessons that I teach at the etiquette school is that, we weren't born with these cell phones attached to our heads. And so, there are some instances when we can't and shouldn't have them present in front of other people because it gives a message that what I have going on my cell phone, even though I'm in front of you and I'm giving you my time, my presence, but what's happening on my cell phone is more important. So it does send a bad message, and children do pick up on that. Like, you are always on your phone.
I want your attention, and they want your attention. They want you present,
and they will get it.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
One way or the other. They're going to get it.
They are. So we are winding up, and I have one last question that I ask all of my guests that come on to the podcast, because it's called the Grace and Grind podcast. So, you've had to overcome personal and professional scrutiny, but in the face of it, lovely, you never allowed it to break you. You never abandoned your character. You were always, always, always a class act. And this is in the face of your most tumultuous grind. How were you able to handle that tough situation with such grace and elegance? Because you didn't abandon it at all.
Thank you. I'll start off I'll leave where I've started, and it's by God's grace, right?
I knew it.
It was only by God's grace. And my Aunt Mary and family, right? I had a lot of family support that was there, right? So, when you couldn't stand, that stood for you, that said like, hey, listen, you're going to get through this. This isn't, we know what this looks like. We know the truth, we know. And
we know you.
We know you, right? Since you were born. And I said to Taylor, I said, sometimes in your faith is all you have left, right? And I just knew that, having been raised in the church, that God gave his biggest battles to his toughest soldiers, and every one of them were tested, right? Every one of their faith had been tested. And every time I felt like I can't do this anymore, a blessing would come through, and he would let me know, like, look, I'm here, right? I see you. I understand.
And I
got you. So I would say that that's how. And especially when in the end what it's truly about, right? It never was about my work. It was never about the service that I provided to the community. This was personal. And it was very personal. And if I had did something that I felt like, okay, well, by not paying attention to certain things, this is what I get, then, okay, I'm guilty of not paying attention. But what you're saying, I'm not guilty of that. And so I just knew that it would come and it would go, and I'll get through it. And despite those challenges that I experienced, it was through the good grace of God that I was able to pull through. And so I tell people all the time, if you don't go to church, find a church home, find something to believe in, find something to hold on to, find something, because this life is worth living. And we never said that there was, that there wouldn't be trouble. And, the promises is that it's not going to last always, right? The storm is going to come, but eventually it will end. And I always remember, my dad, even though we had our challenges, he had this poem on the wall called "Don't Quit." When I was growing up, it was on the closet door. So whenever I went to go and get my washcloth and towel to take a shower and all that, that was the first thing I "Don't quit." And it was a whole poem about how life is going to send you through ups and downs and through changes, but throughout it all, don't quit. And that's all I really thought about, was not quitting.
Powerful message. Powerful, powerful, powerful message. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being here as my special guest. I know people say, she says everybody her special guest. Well, you are. Thank you for being one of my, thank you for being a beautiful example of a Christian woman, for being an exemplary example of a Black woman, a young professional, even though, you're younger than me. So, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, just, the whole premise of this podcast is to show Black females that you don't have to abandon your elegance and your grace. You don't have to not be a lady in order to be a boss, that you can have the best of both worlds. And just thank you for just being an example of that, because when I tell you, you rocked out in straight class, you rocked out in class. And I'm just so honored to have this opportunity to, just share this space with you. I really appreciate you.
And thank you for all that you do. I see you rocking out with so many young women and men. I've seen some men on your show, and I think that it's phenomenal that you're utilizing this platform to tell people stories on how they grace and how they grind.
Thank you. Thank you. I love what I do. And it just seemed like a natural extension from the etiquette school. Like, this had to happen. I felt like there was a gap, and that I was watching the downfall of so many Black women in our community. And the narratives weren't being told by the women that were going through the experiences. And so I wanted to really shed some light on that, and to, allow people in on the other side of the window, so that they can see you for who you are and not for who the media says you are. I just wanted to, again, have this opportunity just to chat with you. So thank you again for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. That's all we have time for, my graceful grinders. And we will see you in 2 weeks with another special guest. Yes, I know you can't wait. But in the meantime, continue to create your totally unique day on purpose.